The Holocaust is described as the mass murdering of 6 million Jews and 1 million other people from different races, religions, and those with disabilities or seen as unfit in German society. The Holocaust took place from the years 1933 to 1945. In order to have a better understanding of the events that led to genocide, we must visit and discuss the years prior to 1933. Before 1933, Europe was devastated from World War I. Germany was especially ravaged by war, and after the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was forced to pay the majority of the war debts, as they were said to have initiated World War I. The Treaty of Versailles did little to help settle the conflicts that started World War I. This treaty and its amendments is what ultimately led to the uprising and popularity of the Nazi Party. In 1935, the Nazi Party declared a new set of laws that encapsulated the racial ideologies of the Nazi Party. These laws were called the Nuremberg Laws, which stated that a person who had Jewish grandparents and were of Jewish descent would also be considered Jewish even if that particular person did not practice Judaism. The Nuremberg Laws also stated that in order to protect the hereditary health of the German people, prospective marriage partners had to go through rigorous fitness exams in order to obtain a marriage license. If one individual was considered unfit to marry, usually he or she had a hereditary illness, contagious disease, or came from a Jewish, Roma, also known as Gypsies, or Black descent. With the Nuremberg Laws fully set in place and the Nazi regime becoming an unstoppable presence in Germany and surrounding countries, the installation of concentration camps began to expand greatly. The first concentration camp was established in the year 1933. This camp was built to incarcerate real and perceived political opponents to Nazi policy. From 1939 to 1942, the construction of concentration camps began to increase significantly. These camps were set in place to hold resistance groups and groups that were deemed racially inferior. The reason for the sudden increase in those camps were due to the commencement of World War II in September of 1939. The living conditions in these camps were poor and had little regard to humanity. These camps were a place of starvation, punishment, liquidation, and mass killings. The smells inside were nauseating, and the filth was unbearable. Countless men and women died due to the living conditions alone. Concentration camps were also the central location of medical experimentation in Nazi Germany. From 1933 to 1945, Nazi Germany set out to cleanse the German population from those seen as a threat to national health. Physicians who were enlisted by the Nazi Party to obtain this goal took off with the idea of creating the perfect race. The first step physicians took was mass sterilization of people in hospitals and institutions, as well as Jews and Roma. After the installation of concentration camps used for the incarceration of races that were deemed inferior, medical experimentation inside of these camps were held in order to, quote, better humanity and improve technology, end quote. There are 3 types of experiments that occurred in these camps. 1. Experiments dealing with the survival of military personnel. These experiments set out to better understand how military personnel could survive longer on the battlefield. Some experiments included how to make seawater a viable drinking source and studying hypothermia and how to treat it. The second category of experimentation was experiments to test drugs and treatments. Some experiments included bone grafting, testing sulfa drugs, and in testing immunization compounds and antibodies for the prevention and treatment of contagious diseases. The third category of experimentations were experiments to advance Nazi racial and ideological goals. These experiments would test how different races withstood various contagious diseases. One of the most famous experiments done in concentration camps were the intensive studies on twins. Dr. Joseph Mengele was the highest-ranking physician at Auschwitz concentration camp. Mengele primarily focused on the third category of experimentation as he studied twins of all ages in order to understand genetic origins and diseases. During this time at Auschwitz, Mengele was better known as the Angel of Death due to his cold and cruel demeanor. Eva Moses Kor is a survivor of those harsh medical experiments done by Dr. Mengele. Eva and her twin, Miriam, were both tested on by Dr. Mengele. Eva states that her and her sister were, quote, reduced to the lowest form of existence, just a mass of living, breathing cells, end quote. Eva also describes the rigorous testing and how she and her sister were always being measured and compared to one another. Eva recalled a trip to the blood lab, in which the nurses and doctors drew her blood and they injected her with a minimum of 5 shots. Eva did not know what they were injecting her with. She just knows for the next couple weeks she fell deathly ill and clung to life. Eva and Miriam were reunited and survived Auschwitz after its liberation in 1945. After the liberation of concentration camps, some of those responsible for the crimes committed during the Holocaust were brought to trial. The Nuremberg trials consisted of 12 proceedings, one being the doctor trials. 23 leading physicians were tried, and after 140 days, 85 testimonies from witnesses, and almost 1,500 documents, the verdict was announced in August of 1947. 16 doctors were found guilty and 7 were sentenced to death.